Hey guys, back with another video, and this time I'm reacting to Portugal for Geography Now. So, Geography Now Portugal should be pretty interesting. Portugal is a fascinating country, so, without further ado, let's get started.
Some countries try to fight the ocean, others are afraid of the ocean.
Yeah.
Some countries try to fight the ocean.
Yeah, the Netherlands. They kind of do, yeah, with all their dams and stuff, they just block all that water. So yeah, they kind of have done that, and they've reclaimed a lot of land, but probably the most out of any nation. So yeah, that's it's quite a feat.
Ocean. Others are afraid
Haha, I'm actually not sure what nation that is.
of the ocean. Portugal practically wants to live in the ocean.
Haha, nice, Portugal. Haha. This village is already underwater. Vilarino da Ferna. Sorry for my terrible pronunciation, by the way.
If they had gills, they'd sell their land and build an Atlantis. Welcome to the powerful little sailor of Europe.
Hey, that's a good, I guess explanation or summary. The powerful little sailor. I like that.
It's time to learn geography
now! Hey everyone, I'm your host Barbs. This episode couldn't have come at a better time because I literally just got back from a trip to Portugal with my mom. I met tons of you guys, the Portuguese geography peeps, and little side note.
Hey everybody, this is João. He is a native Portuguese person. He'll be coming in and out of this episode explaining things about Portugal. So, say hi.
Hi!
Anyway, let's look at the globe now, shall we? Portugal is sometimes called the door to Europe. It's the start to the mainland. The Portuguese are ocean people. They need to be close to the sea. They get uncomfortable without it. With that in mind, their country is pretty ideal for them, location.
They have a lot of seafood too. Yeah, and the location. Location-wise, yeah, I guess so.
Portugal, the rectangle-shaped country, is located at the very end of the Iberian Peninsula, surrounded by Spain on all three sides, as well as two island regions in the Atlantic. They have the westernmost point of continental Europe, Cabo da Roca, and the westernmost point of Europe's domain, the island of Santa Cruz das Flores. Important note, Portugal has one of the oldest borders in Europe and one of the oldest in the world, very much thanks to this treaty signed between these two kings back in 1297. Spanish and Portuguese have always usually had amicable relations in regards to their states.
And they were at one time on the same country under the Iberian Union, I think. So, pretty interesting.
Only kind of dispute they have is over the town of Olivença. This is not an official dispute, but most Portuguese believe that it kind of probably should be theirs because of history or something.
I'm in Portugal. Wouldn't be bad to get just a bit more land, just because of their size already. Why not?
Look it up. For what it's worth, though, there's even a spot where you can zip line across.
I mean, I don't really know about the situation, though.
This river from Portugal into Spain and travel forward 1 hour in time because for some reason.
Oh yeah, that time difference.
Portugal decided to follow the UTC +1 zone instead of +2 like Spain, meaning that even though Galicia is on the same longitude, they are 1 hour ahead. Anyway, the country.
It might actually be Spain's fault for that, though. I've heard something about that. Spain sending it to that time during the war and then never sending it back. So, interesting.
It's divided into 18 districts and 2 autonomous regions, the Azores and Madeira Islands. These 2 island regions give a huge boost to Portugal's exclusive economic zone by over 1.7 million square kilometers, making it the 3rd largest EEZ in the EU and the 20th in the world. The capital is Lisbon.
Oh, nice.
And of course, it holds the largest airport, Lisbon International, as well as the largest shipping port, the Port of Lisbon. The 2nd largest city is actually Sintra, followed by Vila Nova de Gaia. However,
although part of larger Lisbon, okay, makes sense.
Porto actually holds the 2nd busiest airport, and Faro in the south rounds out for 3rd place for airports as well. Remember, even though these little uninhabited guys known as the Savage Islands are closer to the Canary Islands of Spain, they actually belong to Portugal and make up the southernmost part of Portugal's domain. One of which right here, Pontina, is actually a self-proclaimed micronation purchased by some art teacher dude who bought it and then later claimed independence from Portugal in 2007. Keep in mind, these overseas regions, in addition to the Canary Islands and Cape Verde, are part of a larger oceanic region known as Macaronesia, not to be confused with Micronesia, which is halfway across the world.
Yeah, that micronation island thing, that's a weird one. Look it up. They kind of have all they need in that small space as long as they have the largest portion of the Atlantic coast on the Iberian Peninsula. This is kind of what allowed them to become the front runners in the age of discovery and European expedition years. Most of the first and famous explorers you've probably already heard of.
I mean, at one time they were like one of the most powerful countries in the world. well, Spain and Portugal. Yeah.
Magellan and Vasco da Gama, they come from
Yeah.
Portugal.
Sure.
Ahem. Yeah, you guys took the...
I mean, yeah, that's true though. That is really true. No one acknowledges it a lot of the time in European history, or just in world history. But yeah, that is true. They were some of the first Europeans to set foot in the North American continent.
Arctic and Vinland like hundreds of years earlier. For what it's worth, though,
It's important to note that historically, not only were the
But
Portuguese
yeah, this video is about Portugal. Portugal's awesome.
the first to kick off the age of exploration with the first discovery
Yeah,
of the
European exploration.
Azores and Madeira Islands, but they also had a vast empire at one point, expanding across 5 continents.
They did,
as far
yeah.
as East Timor to Brazil and everything in between. The
Although I would say they did try to spread Christianity a bit too hard.
problem was, with the exception of Brazil, Angola, and Mozambique, the Portuguese really only kind of maintained numerous
And the whole slavery thing.
ports and coastal colonies that didn't encroach far inland with the connecting land.
They did seem to be more of a coastal area, colonial country, I guess. So their colonies were always on the coasts, which makes sense. They didn't go as far inland as other countries, for example.
Masses. Their love of the ocean kind of ended up diminishing much of their land claims, and the majority of the ports were either fought over and lost or sold to other colonial powers of the 18th and 19th century.
Makes sense.
Nonetheless, outside of the sovereign Portuguese-speaking countries today, you will see small remnants of Portuguese influence in places like China's special autonomous region of Macau, with its Portuguese-named streets, and the churches and culture of areas like Goa, as well as Dammam and Diu in India.
Anyway, this segment is getting kind of long. Here are some places of interest that you guys, the Portuguese people, suggested we mention in this episode. They have 17 UNESCO heritage sites. Many of
Cool.
them are famous monasteries or churches or sanctuaries.
And they look pretty
Sintra
awesome.
has that cool national palace thing, and this grotto palace.
Oh, wow, that looks
Guimarães has
epic.
that castle where Portugal kind of started. Ericeira is like the best surfing spot. Pretty much the entire city of Porto with its colorful neoclassical and Baroque charm. They also have the coolest bookstore ever and the most beautiful McDonald's. Those boulder homes in Monsanto. The castle of Óbidos. Évora has
Damn.
like the best historic sites and even a Portuguese Stonehenge.
Yeah, reminds me of the Celtic heritage of Portugal.
Coa Valley rock art sites, the world's shortest international bridge with Spain, the cemetery of anchors, the Monte Penedono Dolmen, pretty much everything on Madeira Island with its beaches and botanical gardens,
Epic.
museums. This one is even dedicated to Ronaldo. Lisbon has so many sites like
Man,
the
it looks
Belém
so
Tower,
cool.
the Geronimos Monastery, and every year there is a huge pilgrimage to the town of Fatima, one of the holiest sites in Portugal. Yeah, and that's the thing about Portugal. Like once someone finds a cool hidden natural spot,
The Fatima sounds like a remnant of Al-Andalus, or the time when the Iberian Peninsula was ruled by Moors, which was actually a pretty peaceful time.
it usually gets exposed and invaded fast. And speaking of nature, that brings us to... Now, as mentioned, Portugal is an ocean-loving country that loves the sea and water. Nonetheless, the actual people do need to kind of live on land and like grow food on it and stuff. So yeah,
Yeah.
this is how you break it down.
Portugal's land makeup, of course, is made up of the 2 main parts that fall under Portuguese sovereignty, the continental Portuguese landmass on the Iberian Peninsula, and the 2 island regions of the Azores and the Madeira Islands. The continental part of Portugal is located on the Eurasian plate, close to the convergence of the African plate. Geologists speculate that there could be a newly emerging rift which could explain some of the seismic activity, such as the Great Lisbon earthquake of 1755 that nearly destroyed the entire
That's
city on
unfortunate.
All Saints' Day. Look it up. Anyway, the northern parts are generally more mountainous and hilly, with 2 main mountain chains,
That's really not brought up enough, huh? It was really
the
unfortunate.
northern Meseta Mountains, and the Cerro da Estrela, which has Torre, the tallest point on the mainland. However, if we're talking about the tallest point in the entire country, that actually belongs to Mount Pico on Azores Island. Back to the mainland, though, the country is shaped by 3 main rivers: the Douro in the north, the longest river of the country, the Tagus, or Taj, and the Guadiana in the south, which feeds into the largest lake of the country, Lake Alqueva, which is actually a reservoir created by the Alqueva Dam. The south of the country, known as the southern Meseta, is generally flatter and lush, with the Sado Basin fed by the Sado River. Skipping over to the island regions, the Azores and Madeira Islands are volcanic archipelagos, generally lush and green, and mild to warm year-round. Madeira actually has a UNESCO nature zone, the Laurisilva, or Laurel Forests of the north side. For the Azores,
That's
they are
cool.
kind of precariously positioned right at the triple junction of 3 tectonic plates, and the westernmost
Oh.
islands, Corvo and Flores, are actually located in the North American plate. They are beautiful green islands that actually kind of resemble
Interesting.
the Irish countryside, with farm plots dotted everywhere. This island chain is also the only part of Europe, if you don't consider the Caucasus part of Europe, where tea can be cultivated naturally in its environment.
Phew,
That's cool. I heard the Portuguese actually spread tea to the UK. The English, they got tea from the Portuguese, is what I've heard. So that could contribute to that, maybe. Or maybe they were just, the tea drinkers that kind of spread it around. But anyway, fascinating stuff.
Compact in detail, and we didn't even get to talk about all the cool stuff like the cave beach of Benaguil,
Damn, that looks epic.
or this tidal pool, or that place where the largest wave ever was surfed by that dude.
Whoa, that was Portugal?
Yes, it was. Look it up. In the meantime, you know the deal. I take my triple shot of espresso break, which means Noah comes in to fill in for the rest of this segment.
Did somebody say
And the Portuguese love their espresso, their cafe.
Keith?
No, I believe he said Noah. For one, they are masters of making anything out of trees, as over a third of the country is forested mostly with oaks, pines, and eucalyptus. Such Portuguese companies like the Navigator Company are world-renowned for paper products. And Amorium is the world's largest cork producer, and Portugal being #1 in cork production in general. You will see tons of stuff around Portugal made of cork. Cork purses, cork shoes, cork notebooks, cork everything. And
That's
they love their wine, with port, rosé, green, and Madeira wines being some of the most popular types. Portugal is home to many animal species as well. In the continental side, you will find mammals like wild pigs, wild goats, hares, foxes. The unofficial national animal, though, or at least a common national symbol, would technically be the legendary mythical Barcelos rooster. They're Europe's top seafood consumer per capita and usually in the top 4.
Interesting. I mean, that would make sense, them being such a high consumer of seafood. I'd imagine Greece would be among them as well.
Worldwide. And of course brings us to the final segment, food! Some top notable dishes you guys, the Portuguese geography, suggest.
I know they do eat a lot of seafood, like a lot of anchovies, I've heard. Yeah, anchovies, and I tried some Portuguese food, it's really tasty, so I would love to try more as well.
We mentioned include things like the most iconic national soup, caldo verde. These two sandwiches are probably the most popular
Wow, looks tasty.
Pastéis de nata and
Yep. Oh man, I love pastéis de nata. Absolutely amazing. Delicious. Portuguese pastries are delicious. I have to say that. I'm more of a savory man, but Portuguese pastries are pretty damn tasty. I love those little tarts. They're delicious. I mean, and they spread those tarts to China, so I mean, a lot of the times you can find them in dim sum and Chinese restaurants as well. And Chinese bakeries, which I really like as well. But yeah, Portuguese egg tarts, pastéis de nata, delicious, yeah.
Finally, with seafood, they have everything. Sandwiches are probably the most popular ones. Pastéis de nata. And finally, with seafood, they have everything from cuttlefish, crabs, shrimp, spiny lobster, barnacles, mackerel, lamprey, sea bass, clams, oysters, periwinkles, scallops, sardines.
Dude, the Portuguese make
Oh yeah, sardines. I said anchovies before, but I meant sardines. The Portuguese love sardines. I've heard they have so many sardine dishes.
best octopus I ever had in my life.
Fun fact, the Portuguese actually introduced samosas to India. Tempura.
Oh yeah, I know they introduced tempura. Or something like tempura, like the sort of method of doing tempura. Which is damn interesting, Portuguese need a bit more credit there, huh? They sort of introduced tempura and samosa too, wow. Fascinating.
To Japan, and England probably wouldn't have tea.
Yeah, exactly. I was mentioning this before.
If the Portuguese hadn't traded with China. And of course, the most popular dish of Portugal, often seen as the national dish, bacalhau, which is salted cod, deliberately preserved and soaked before
I've heard of this.
Interestingly enough, cod isn't even commonly caught off their coast, so they have to resort to importing it usually from the North Sea. Their national dish isn't even really found naturally in their own country. But what does occur naturally in Portugal are the Portuguese people. Let's meet them, shall we?
Probably incurs a bit of a cost. Maybe they could look for something closer, but I mean, whatever.
Thank you, Noah. Keith again. Art. Take care of this.
Where am I going? Oh!
You're welcome.
Now, I asked João to describe the Portuguese, and here are some things he said.
Desenrascanço. It's like a resourcefulness of ways. So if you give us like a corkscrew and a frisbee, we'll give you a scooter. Another one is estar com os azeites, when someone is really grumpy or in a real bad mood.
To sum it up, that's the ideal Portuguese way. In any case,
The country has about 10.
A little bit different than the average Mediterranean or Latin people. Well, I guess yeah, Portugal isn't really a Mediterranean country. They're pretty damn close, but yeah, I guess a little bit different than the average Latin country.
0.5 million people, and they are one of the top aging populations.
I'd say, stereotypically, like Latin descended people are more lively, cheerful, but that's cool. That's cool.
In the world and has the highest emigration rate in the EU. The exact numbers are not always completely reliable, but many sources on average report that somewhere around 90 to 95% of the population identifies as Portuguese, but that term is very broad as there are many different types of Portuguese people that look totally different from the others. Some of them are blonde-haired and blue-eyed, and some are tan and olive and brunette. Either way, Portuguese. The remainder of the 5 to 10% of the population comes from all over the world, mostly Europe and former colonial states like Brazil, Angola, and Mozambique, and even a small Asian minority as well, mostly Macau Chinese, and India from Goa and Daman and DU.
They use the euro as their currency, they use the Type C and F plug outlets, and they drive on the right side of the road. Now, of course, in Portugal, the official language is Portuguese, a Latin-based Romance language. It's actually related to the Galician language in North Spain, and usually the two can pretty much understand each other, and weirdly enough, Galicians and North Portuguese people have
Celtic heritage.
Celtic roots.
Haha, nice. Although also forgetting the region of Britannia, or Brittany in English. You're forgetting that region of France. But yeah, cool. Pretty epic, yeah. Portugal has a Celtic root, so yeah, that should be acknowledged. It's pretty cool.
We'll talk more about that in the Spain episode. But anyway, Portugal also technically has a second regionally official language, Mirandese, which is only spoken by about 15,000 people.
That sounds cool.
In 2 municipalities of the northeast region. But otherwise, okay, just being straight up, Portuguese is the most difficult Latin language for me personally. But after spending some time in Portugal, I figured out a
sounds a bit like Slavic language.
shortcut if you want to learn how to speak Portuguese. Here's how you do it. Step 1, be Russian. Step 2, get drunk. Step 3, try to speak Spanish. Meu nome é Paulo, eu gosto de pastiche de pilão. Calm down, this was a joke. Geography Now does not endorse underage drinking or alcoholism. And also, do not confuse the Portuguese with the Spanish. They hate that.
And they sound nothing alike.
Actually, when I met João, I had this conversation with him. Hey, João?
Yes?
When I go to Portugal, would it be okay if I spoke some Spanish just in case if I had a complete communication problem?
Yeah, no, don't. Just don't. Trust me, you're better off just using English.
So anyway, the Portuguese, as mentioned, have a lot of ocean history and Catholic roots. About 81% of the country identifying to varying degrees of devotion as Roman Catholic. The Portuguese aren't too quick to note that they did kind of start the Atlantic
Yeah, they started the Atlantic slave trade.
Although keep in mind the East African slave trade.
Yeah, that did exist for a while too. Both are bad.
It was actually,
but one's probably a little bit worse. I would say the Atlantic was probably a bit worse, but I don't know. But yeah, slavery in any form is not really great, so it's pretty damn bad.
actually started centuries prior by Arabs in the Indian Ocean. Moving on!
Yeah, that's true. It was started centuries earlier by Arabs.
Culture comes
and also, of course, indigenous people as well, yeah. Anyway.
Many fascinating, vibrant forms of tradition and custom. And with that, here's Random Hannah to explain.
Portugal today is a very distinct nation, but if you dig close, you can see the layers of influence from groups like Phoenician, the Celtic, Germanic,
Phoenicians. That's pretty cool. Yeah, the Phoenicians. I would guess from their from just their trading and all that, they might have set up some areas in the Iberian Peninsula. So that's pretty cool. And also, of course, the Punics, or Hannibal actually had he controlled the Iberian Peninsula for a while as well. So that's sort of an offshoot maybe of Phoenician culture as well. Anyway, it's interesting.
Visigoth, Vikings,
yeah. Let's see what else.
Influence from groups like Phoenician, the Celtic, Germanic, Visigoth, Viking,
Visigoth, Viking, they're all Germanic, yeah.
Sephardic, Jewish.
Yeah, yes, there's a lot of Sephardic Jewish, I've heard. and Spain as well. I heard there's a lot of Sephardic Jewish influence. I heard a lot of them were converted to Christianity, which is a bit unfortunate. But yeah, there's a lot of people who have Jewish roots as well. I've heard.
And Moorish people. Yeah.
Yeah, Moorish people. Yeah, of course they were controlled by the Moors for a while, long time.
Even Vikings.
And don't you forget it.
Of course, as intrepid maritime folk,
Oh, Viking it's more of a job term. But yeah.
the Portuguese were the first to invent galleon ships that launched off the age of discovery for Europe,
That's
post-Viking
pretty
era.
cool.
With that, they also created the first forms of Western-style nautical cartography and navigation. It would later be taught and used across the continent. One guy even tried to pioneer one of the first airship designs. Although Portugal
Damn,
may
cool.
not be well known
Super talented, just not as well known, huh?
for their painters or graphic arts. I mean, this dude went crazy and burned every single one of his paintings except one. They definitely
damn.
have a tradition of three-dimensional expression that dates back centuries. Distinct Portugal styles include things like Manueline architecture of the 16th century, and even today, people like Bordalo II continue the tradition of three-dimensional art. Fun fact, you can probably guess a home is Portuguese if the exterior walls have tiles on them, and often blue pattern tiles. They have their own unique Portuguese sport, where you have to knock off a pin with metal discs in varying weights and sizes. Nonetheless,
Interesting.
no shocker,
That's good. Keep
soccer
your
or
indigenous
football
traditions.
is the most popular sport, with their oldest
Yeah, that
club
makes
dating
sense.
back to 1893 in
Oh,
Porto.
wow.
Their national team has consistently raised
Although, I mean, football in its origin is Chinese. But yeah, I mean, of course, it's so popular in Latin countries and in Europe and in South America.
high in FIFA standings. We all know Ronaldo is the most mainstream, noteworthy face of Portuguese football today. I mean, the guy has multiple statues of
Damn.
himself. The legendary Eusebio is considered one of the greatest football icons of all time and the symbol of the nation's sport. Festivals, of course, adorn the entire nation from north to south, many rooted in Catholic tradition. June is a huge month where the Festival of the Three Saints take place all over the country, honoring St. Anthony, John, and Peter, where there's a lot of wine and sardines with fireworks. There's also many
Cool.
unique regional festivals like the Festa de
That
Coco,
looks
in which
cool.
they do fun dragon slaying performances.
That
There's the
looks cool.
Lazarine Carnival, one of the only places where Celtic rituals can be seen. Anyways, the festivities
cool.
are usually filled with music, which I guess means we're moving on to Keith's segment.
All right. Starting as early as Gregorian chants in the medieval ages, evolving into the classical era, and eventually winning Eurovision, Portugal has had lots of musical accolades. And there's a
True.
certain word that kind of describes the overall feeling of Portugueseness when it comes to music. Saudade. Saudade. It translates to something like a sense of melancholy and longing, as if something were missing. This type of mindset is one of the key elements that inspired the most famous of all Portuguese musical genres, fado. It's even listed as a UNESCO heritage trait. The most recognizable
neat.
name with fado being Amália Rodrigues. Listen to it and see what you think. The Portuguese have their own version of guitars, drums, accordions, even bagpipes. The ukulele
Yeah, I've heard of Portuguese bagpipes. Pretty cool.
from Hawaii was actually introduced from the Portuguese migrants, mostly from
Oh, the ukulele, huh?
pipes. The ukulele from Hawaii was actually introduced from the Portuguese migrants,
Yeah, there's quite a bit of Portuguese culture in Hawaii as well, so that's cool.
mostly from the Azores and Madeira Islands, where my ancestors are actually from. Fun fact. Today, the Portuguese music
neat.
scene has everything from
It's
mainstream
Portuguese,
hip-hop,
huh? That's cool. I guess Portuguese ancestry. That's cool.
rock pop, metal, Moonspell being one of the more popular metal bands from Portugal. One time I saw Moonspell at, I think it was Ozfest. I don't remember. Moonspell is awesome.
And thank you, Keith. All right, and with that, we gotta
Cool.
move on to the incredibly condensed history section. Proto-Iberian cultures, Indo-European migrations, Atlantic Bronze Age, Lisbon.
Oh yes, there of course were the I guess the
History section.
pre-Indo-European people, and also I mean we have the Basques, sort of a bit north of them, right over here, I guess. In between France and Spain, you have these people called the Basques, and they are actually Proto-Indo-European. So that's pretty fascinating. So we do have a remnant of them. And there were Greek colonies in the Iberian Peninsula as well.
Iberian cultures, Indo-European
Yeah, okay.
migrations, Atlantic Bronze Age, Lisbon founded,
Alice Ubo. Interesting.
Phoenicians,
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Phoenicians, yeah.
cultures, Indo-European migrations, Atlantic Bronze Age, Lisbon founded,
Phoenicians. Oh yeah, and Carthage. Yes, Carthage is what I was thinking of. Carthage was a colony of the Phoenicians, eventually making their own colonies, and they had a lot of territory in Iberia, with Hannibal owning a lot of the Iberian Peninsula at one time. So pretty fascinating.
Proto-Celts,
Proto-Celts, yeah. Yeah, they were even in Turkey. Yeah.
Rome comes in, Christianity,
Yeah, Rome, big part.
persecution of Christians, Visigoths, Vandals, Moors, Muslim
Yeah, the Visigoths and Vandals, they kind of assimilated into the culture, eventually adapting Latin pretty much.
years, Vikings come in
Yeah, Muslim years a long time.
briefly from the north parts, fighting, blah blah.
Alfonso Conquistador in the 1139 after independence from Leon. Oh, interesting.
Blah, they get their first king after independence from Leon. Uninhabited Madeira and Azores Islands discovered. Age of Discovery kicks off. Atlantic slave trade.
Unfortunate. Portuguese interior trade, especially gold. Okay.
Colonies established. Inquisitions. Great Earthquake of 1755. Napoleon
That was unfortunate.
years. First Constitution. Last monarch deposed. Republic. World War I. Joins Allied forces. World War II. Gets messy. Salazar begins his reign. Colony wars in Africa. Colonies gain independence, but Timor is still on hold. New constitution. Joins EU. World's Fair Expo. Releases Macau. Releases East Timor. Hipster shops and trendy yet pretentious warehouse district cafes open up. And here we are today. We asked you guys for a list of some of the top notable people from Portugal or of Portuguese descent, and they include people like Prince Henry the Navigator, even though he never really did any exploring himself. Bartolomeu Dias. Vasco da Gama.
Yeah, I've heard of him.
Ferdinand Magellan.
Heard of him, yeah.
These athletes, these two popes, Nobel Prize winner in medicine Egas Moniz, the
That's cool.
greatest writers Luis de Camões, Fernando Pessoa, and Jose Saramago, Daniela Rua, Carmen Miranda, Maria João Pires, Sara Sampaio, Paula Rego, and some American and Canadian celebrities that have Portuguese descent include Nelly Furtado, Shawn Mendes.
Oh yeah, Shawn Mendes. I heard he was Portuguese. That's cool.
One of my favorite animators, J.G. Quintel. Even Tom Hanks.
Interesting. Oh, Tom Hanks.
And this guy, I guess. You got Portuguese, right?
Yeah, totally, man. Great grandfather was actually born. He was born in the Madeira Islands.
Keith Everett. Well, as you can see by now, with their bold, exploring
cool.
roots, Portugal has definitely left its mark on the world. And with that, we move on to see how the mark has impacted their relationships to others around the world. Yeah, Portugal is kind of like the smallest nation that left the biggest legacy. Over 30 times more people than the population of Portugal across the world speak Portuguese than in Portugal.
For one, they have the longest official alliance between two countries on Earth with the UK, forged in
Oh yeah, they are really buddy with the UK. I'd say that's a bit unfortunate, actually, but okay.
1373, they have been working alongside the British for a long time and have developed numerous bilateral policies and trade deals. Long story short, the Portuguese introduced tea to the British, and the British helped them get...
I mean, as they say, you can't even trust the Brits in the dark, but I mean, that's just saying.
Cod. For France, Portugal is kind of like the lean Latin boy next door who keeps trying to flirt with France, even though she's kind of dating Germany. There are more Portuguese people living abroad in France than any other nation at about 2 million. The Portuguese love the French. They enjoy the laissez-faire.
That's cool, they actually like the French. I have heard that Italians don't like the French, for some reason, even though French like the Italians. But anyway, that's cool to see a nice relationship between France and Portugal.
Culture and charm and have integrated very well into French society. The Portuguese were the first Europeans to have encountered the Japanese, and much of the historical interaction reverberates to this day culturally.
That's cool.
I mean, they founded the port city of Nagasaki, and even the word arigato is derived from the Portuguese word obrigado. Even when Japan was isolated, they traded for centuries, only with the Portuguese. Even though things got messy in the 60s and 70s, they still have close ties to their former colonies, especially Brazil, Angola, and to some extent Mozambique. Many of the
there was a few specific traders and countries that Japan allowed during one time, and but during their the most notable period of Japanese history, where they were closed off, they only allowed the Dutch. But I think the Dutch and the Chinese. But anyway, I'm sure Portuguese and the Japanese have a good relationship.
These people have recently moved in on separate migration waves, and today you can see many of them in major cities like Lisbon and Porto. Billions of dollars are traded with Angola annually.
Makes sense.
Portugal even canceled Mozambique's remaining debts from independence in 2005 at nearly $400 million.
But why would they have debts? I mean, okay. Why should they even have debts if they were a colony? Whatever.
Brazil is their biggest legacy. It's like the son they fed steroids and became a massive giant bodybuilder. Today, the Brazilian dialect of Portuguese is more widely taught and distributed.
And it sounds a bit more Spanish
in media than actual Portuguese, and even after independence, the two have shared a privileged family bond that will always have high favor towards the other. For what it's worth though, when it comes to their best friend, most Portuguese might begrudgingly hate to admit it, but they kind of, at the end of the day, will always walk side by side with their oldest friend, Spain. Portugal was actually the first nation that fully emerged out of the Iberian Peninsula back when Spain was a bunch of disjointed kingdoms. Since then, they've been rivals and adversaries. During colonial years, they competed to see who could take over the Americas better. They've had centuries of conflict and treaties, alliances, unions, arguments, but in the end, they just have that Iberian culture and Latin root that ties them in so closely as brothers.
In conclusion,
we say that we like to keep things moderate and simple, but our history is anything but moderate and simple. Our love of water kind of spilled over into a global empire phenomenon that even us probably didn't see coming. Today, the Portuguese legacy lives on.
Stay tuned. Gunther is coming up next.
Oh, that was pretty awesome. Portugal is a fascinating country. I think we should watch
welcome back to
Flag/Fan Friday.
Fan Friday. Hope you liked the Portugal episode. This is going to be a good one. So as you know, there's the part where we talk about the small mistakes or the things that we didn't talk about in the episode. For one, I said Spain surrounds on 3 sides. Technically, it's 2. I mean, come on. They have a lot of weird edges, so you can kind of make like 3 sides, whatever. Anyway, me justifying my idiocy. I also said Portugal follows the UTC +1 zone, when actually it's UTC 0, but during daylight savings, technically it is UTC +1. So the second and third largest cities are basically just Porto and Faro. Sintra is just kind of like the greater metropolitan Lisbon area, and Vila Nova de Gaia is basically just the Porto area. Also, many people dispute the origins of the word arigato.
Oh yeah, I didn't know if that was 100% true.
Portuguese will say that it came from Portuguese, but it's not complete.
Well, technically, arigato is just like a shortening of many different words of like a whole sentence, I think. So the Japanese just kind of shortened it to arigato, so maybe it kind of gets some influence from obrigado in that sense. But I know, yeah, like the full Japanese word used to be way longer.
Completely confirmed, but many will say it's not. When I forgot to mention the name of the art teacher guy who bought that micronation. The animation with the Portuguese colonies thing, it wasn't exactly quite accurate in the Asia part, because when animating, we tried to just kind of overlay this image over this one, and it didn't quite work out very well. So it looked like the Portuguese had colonies in like Bhutan and Laos. But hey, at least we got Brazil, Angola, and Mozambique right. And Edgar Moniz was a Nobel Prize winner, but he kind of got it for inventing the lobotomy, which is not very commendable. There's a bunch of other phrases that you guys wanted me to use to describe the Portuguese people. We didn't really talk too much about how the southern part was actually conquered by the north part, and we kind of forgot to mention that the country was under the Habsburgs for a little bit. Pretty sure there's a ton of other things we could have mentioned or that we forgot. If you know of anything, put it in the comments. Otherwise, we gotta move on. So, without further ado, dude, the Portugal episode was so fun, and I'm so glad that I actually got to go there with my mom.
I do have a pretty badass flag.
We got to see a lot of cool things, and we got to meet a lot of you guys, the Portuguese geography peeps. Lisbon is such a beautiful city, so many things going on, and I love that monument of discovery. So anyway, the flag. The flag of Portugal is a bicolor of unequal green and red stripes, the larger one being red on the right, with a simplified variant of the coat of arms in between them. We'll talk about
countries who have their coat of arms on their flag. I always thought that was pretty fascinating and just cool. Like it makes the flag cooler. Although it does make it more difficult to draw.
This later. These colors represent the Portuguese Republican Party that broke away from the kingdom years during the Republican Revolution of 1910. It is said that the green represents the hope of the nation, and you can probably guess what the red stands for.
Oh wow, nice.
Thank you, Jared, for making that animation. How appropriate that I'm wearing this shirt. And oh, by the way, we have an updated version of the Blood of Those Who Fight for the Freedom shirt on geographynow.com. Get your blood shirts right now, if you want. I'm not gonna force you, but I'm just saying, they're cool. Anyway, keep in mind, originally, Portugal's flag actually kind of looked like the flag of Finland. It was a blue cross on a white field, and then they added a bunch of other things, like a crown and blah, blah, blah. But basically, the reason why it looks like this now is because when Portugal became a republic, they kind of wanted to scrap anything that reminded them of the royal family, and then they added a few other cool things, which brings us to the coat of arms. The coat of arms is an image surrounded on the edges by golden olive branches. In the center
Looks
lies
cool.
a shield with another shield and 5 smaller shields in it. In the outer border of the shield, you have the 7 castles
Many
that
shields.
represent the 7 fortresses that were conquered during the conquest of the southern part of Portugal.
Ah,
On the
interesting.
interior of the
Story
shield,
made up,
you have
yeah.
a white field with 5 smaller blue shields with 5 small dots inside each of the blue shields. The disposition of these smaller shields is associated with the cross of Christ. There are no official statements from the government, but the most popular explanations usually state that the 5 dots represent the 5 wounds of Christ, and the 5 shields represent the 5 Moorish kings that were defeated during the time of King Alfonso. Some also say that it could also stand for the pieces of silver that Jesus was sold for from Judas Iscariot, but again, no official statement has been released. Behind the shield is the armillary sphere. This was actually created by Templars, and it was introduced in 1860 by King John VI, and it's a nautical instrument used by sailors to navigate celestial
Oh, wow.
objects from
That's
Earth's point of
cool.
view while traveling, hence alluding to the nautical
That's
culture
pretty
of
epic.
Portugal. Throughout the
Damn,
years, this coat
that's
of arms has
cool.
actually kind of been like a consistent image of symbolism for Portugal. The only thing is, during the kingdom years, it used to have like a crown over it, but then during the Republican years, they took off the crown. All right, so that's just about it, which means you know what time it is. It's time for Geography Fan Mail time. All right, here we go. Fan Friday. As you know, we always got to have guest stars.
All right, that was damn awesome. Definitely loved that episode. Learned a bit. That was cool, and I hope I provided some interesting background information. Maybe hope I elaborated a bit. But yeah, definitely fascinating. Comment down below with your thoughts. You know, help the algorithm a bit. And like the video, subscribe if you like my reaction, and you can also check out the original in the description. What else? Oh yeah, comment down below with what you want me to react to next. Yeah. And yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.